in general, we're missing out on asking ourselves the question, like, what do you want out of your life?
Mm-hmm.
So how are you asking your friends that question? And how are you answering that question? And how are you engaging in this positive social pressure and holding each other accountable? Welcome to Something More Human. I'm Sam.
And I'm Elliot. We're a married couple exploring human connection and its impact on ours, our guests, and our listeners' lives.
Join us in creating something more human.
Back in the studio / living / our apartment, your favorite sultry voice, Samantha L. Archuleta. Nice.
I feel like I need some like boxing music to run down into the ring.
Yeah, we refuse to do After Effects, so we are making our own sound effects. That was even worse.
Mine was better. Yours is in beta.
Okay, sorry.
So welcome back, you guys. We're unbelievably excited to say that this is our very first episode ever with a sponsor.
Yeah.
Nice. This episode is sponsored by New Mexico Tea Company. We're so excited to be working with them. And we have some fun stuff that we'll be sharing with you later in the episode.
Yeah.
Imagine this. You're in a room with 3,200 other people, and you walk in thinking that you are going to be just an attendee. You're going to sit, watch a couple of sessions, get a snack, watch some more, go home. But one of the sessions, the speaker, instead of standing on the stage addressing all 3,200 participants, he is walking through the audience and he is voluntelling some people to take a hot seat. And the question that he poses to the audience is, if you can hit reset on any one part of your life today, start tomorrow as day one, what would it be? Now, this was primarily a personal development conference. So there were speakers like David Goggins, people who are really kind of aspiring for something more. Maybe they're athletes, maybe they're business owners, but it wasn't specifically for entrepreneurs. And this speaker really kind of primed us at the beginning to be considering our relationships.
Yeah, as soon as he took the stage, which was not the stage, he did not go to the stage at once. I guess he was introduced, or was he introduced on the ground? Do you remember? I feel like all those things matter. I think he was introduced on the ground. So right away we were like sort of disarmed, or maybe re-alarmed a little bit and sort of awake, because it was a different setup than everyone else before him. And he said, first thing he said was, I want you to take your phone out and I want you to think of the first person that comes to your mind and text them and tell them how much they mean to you. And right away we were like, okay, we're in for something here. That's quite a bit different than what we've been experiencing the last few hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so the story unfolds.
Many of these volunteers that he called on to take a hot seat in front of 3,000 other people were primed in the way that he set us up for, which is thinking about our relationships. So he really did a fantastic job of asking very pointed questions, getting to the heart of the matter very quickly, and pressuring them in this kind of positive, firm, but loving way to actually take the action of pressing reset, to actually take the action of doing something that would transform the relationship. And Elliot and I just left floored, so inspired. So the point in telling you all of this is he gave these attendees a platform to not only share their story, to not only be vulnerable, but to leverage the positive social pressure of being in a room with tons and tons of other people to actually do the action that he's suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want to do here.
Right.
We may not be sitting in front of 3,200 people, maybe one day, but the ripple effect, right? There's 3,200 people in the room. Elliot and I are so inspired. We're telling you on the podcast, maybe you're inspired. And that ripple effect, I mean, I think that that's really the seed for change.
Yeah, definitely. I think the point too is that obviously the number matters, right? People started clapping at certain points of the storytelling, which right away you feel like the person being spoken to in front of 3,200 people, you really felt like, I felt like we were all behind them,
Mm-hmm.
And the point that we're trying to make is that 3,200 people is a lot, and most of us can't really get 3,200 people in a room. But can you get, 5 people in a room? Can you get 20 people in a room? Can you get 75 people in a room? I feel like because of social media, numbers in relation to humans are like so skewed.
Mm-hmm.
If you see someone with 75 followers, you might think, that's not a lot compared to someone who has thousands or millions. But have you ever stood on stage in front of 75 people? That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. There is absolutely power in, your network that might consist of 25 or 50 or 75 people. And, that's sort of the point that we're trying to make, is that obviously the 3,200, really mattered. But, that number doesn't have to be that big to inspire change.
Totally. Also, like, when we think about social media, it's like, oh, I have 75 followers. Like, that's basically nothing. No, you never, ever know who's watching, and you never know who's going to be inspired. And you can just be a regular person. You don't have to be a billionaire. You don't have to be a famous social media influencer. You can just be a regular person interacting with other regular people,
Right.
and be making a positive impact.
Right. And the numbers, they're not numbers, it's your life. And so you're right. I mean, like we've said in the previous episode, sometimes it just starts with one person.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? This idea of the conference and the 3,200 people started with just a few people.
Right.
And that's pretty powerful. And like they kept saying too, like, they're not special. Like, we're not special people. Like, we had this idea and we, went after it and made it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty impactful.
Yeah, that's something I always leave inspired by, is like rooms like this or places like this. You're not going to meet all 3,200 other participants, right? You're going to meet 4 people. You're going to meet 8 people. And one of those connections, maybe all of those connections, will lead to something more. So right at the edge of your comfort zone, when you start feeling like, oh, well, maybe I'm a little awkward, I don't feel like introducing myself, that could be what makes or breaks taking you to the next level, whether it's life satisfaction, whether it's love, whether it's friendship, whatever it may be. So Elliot and I really want to talk about both. What are the tangible strategies for how do you find and how do you know what kinds of people to keep in your inner circle and to bring close to you? And we also want to be like pioneers of creating those spaces, the physical space where you can step into and meet those people.
And so here are those 5 ways to know who to keep in your circle. And I feel like the first one is the most difficult for me, which is sobering. So we might as well, talk about the one that is the most difficult. And it's like finding people in your life that you can talk more about ideas than you do about other people. That's a hard one, That's like a really, really tough one. And I feel like we're getting better at it, but I feel like there are moments where we, there's just gossip and it's easy to do. And sometimes it's, I don't even want to say fun, almost like addicting, right? But I feel like the people in your life need to be people who are talking to you about their ideas and they're asking you about your ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important.
Yeah, I think that sometimes in the past when I've heard this, I'm like, oh, well, that only applies to entrepreneurship. Like, I can only be thinking about my next business idea. And I can only have friends that are interested in talking about business strategies and their business ideas and telling me about how they think about my business ideas. And that is certainly a great way, but it's not the only way. I think that in general, we're missing out on asking ourselves the question, like, what do you want out of your life?
Mm-hmm.
So how are you asking your friends that question, and how are you answering that question, and how are you engaging in this positive social pressure and holding each other accountable?
Yeah.
Even things like burnout, right? Like, I met with Christina. You guys know her. She came on the show, talked about breakups. If you missed that episode, I'll link it. And we were just hanging out at the pool, and she's telling me about some of the things that she's working on. Of course, there's an entrepreneurial element because she does have a business.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, what are you going to fill that time with? Are you going to fill that time with other productive things? Or are you going to fill that time with things that fill your cup, that are detached from productivity because you don't want to burn out? And like, that felt a little bit uncomfortable because I was kind of pushing a little bit maybe a little tough love.
Mm-hmm.
But those questions I think are really important.
Yeah, and I'm wondering why we don't ask them. And I think it's a couple things, like we're uncomfortable with uncomfortability.
Mhm.
And also I think, and I'm not trying to project. I'm not trying to put my words and my thoughts into other people. And I think that's just me caring too much about what people think. But I really do think, from my experience, it's easier to talk about people than it is ideas, because the ideas that we have, most of us are too scared to commit to.
Mm.
Most of us feel like we don't have the time or the energy,
Mhm.
which is very understandable, especially now. Like, everything's really expensive and we're all trying to work to make a living. But I really feel like that's why it's so much easier to do. And I think that's why it must be done. That's why, like, it must, like, the uncomfortability, like, must happen. Like, you have to have people in your life that you can be uncomfortable with. You have to have people in your life that you can, be accountable to and ask those really, really hard questions. Like, I talk to Joe all the time about these things, and he's the person that I can really be, open and honest with and say, like, hey, you said you were going to do this last week, but you're telling me this thing, it still hasn't gotten done. Like, why?
Mhm.
And it's just a general question, like, why? I'm not challenging you. Well, I am, but I'm just asking you, like, why hasn't it gotten done?
Mhm.
And sometimes you need that outside perspective, even if it's one person.
Mhm.
Hopefully it's many, but even starting with one is really powerful. And that's someone I can really hold accountable, and vice versa. And it's important. And it's not to say him and I don't talk about people, but I think it's
Sure.
it's the balance, right? It's being able to talk about ideas
Mhm.
and not just people.
Yeah, and that's also with the caveat, like, not to say that every conversation you have has to be productive. That's kind of what it sounds like this is getting at. That's not
Mhm.
what it's getting at. It's just getting at, like, I think we all want something out of our life, right? So what is that thing, and what are we doing to get a little bit closer to that satisfaction or to that happiness or to that play and fun and these elements of life that just get a little bit caught up and put on the back burner as we get busy.
So number 2, the folks in your life should be action oriented, which is obviously we're already talking a little bit about. They say they're going to do something and they do it.
I think this is like a two-pronged thing. It's both action-oriented, but it's also a trust in your word.
Mm.
Like, if you tell me you're going to do something, then I, as your friend, know that I can trust that you will get that thing done.
Yeah,
And you're walking your talk.
for sure.
And it's that cliche, like, actions speak louder than words. It's a cliche because it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a two-person team. And so,
We're a 2-woman team.
yeah. I don't get it, because we
you
say
said
2-man.
Yeah. I'm going to cut that part out.
Like I said, it starts with one person, because now we're doing this thing together. And it's like, if we don't do the things that we say we're going to do, we will fail. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's so much to do. There was so much to do for the event. There's so much to do for the podcast. There's so much to do. And it's like, I struggle more, with doing than you do. My strength is the ideas, but following through is a different story. But it's not like, the 5 people you have in your life, they all have to be action oriented, unless, otherwise you can't be friends with them and you can't hang out with them. We're not saying that. The 5 people that you want in your foxhole, so to speak, overall should be people that are action oriented, because you end up becoming the people that you hang out with,
Yes.
And if all 5 of them are all idea, no action, you're just going to feed off that energy, and it's an endless loop. And I couldn't imagine surrounding myself with 4 others of myself. Like, I would be inspired for sure by all the ideas, but if no one's taking action, what are you supposed to do?
And just really quick, Elliot said, like, who are these people in your foxhole? I mentioned David Goggins spoke at this event. Just to give you a quick, I didn't know what this was until he told us. David Goggins has a background in military. He was
Navy SEAL.
Yeah, he was a Navy SEAL. So the foxhole comes from this military framework, which is like the small pit, like dug pit in the ground that you hide in during action, right? And it's really small. So there are people who literally, like, have your back in life or death situations. So it's very intimate, and it's very critical. And this is kind of like this inner circle, the foxhole, etc. If you hear us say that, that's what we're talking about.
Number 3 is someone who can be proud of your accomplishments. This is probably the biggest one, I think. This is like one of the biggest ones, because this comes back to the first one, like with the uncomfortability with being uncomfortable. It's like, I think we get really offended when, you, me, everyone We get offended when we achieve something and it seems like the friends and family that are closest to us don't seem happy for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an us problem. It's not
Exactly.
about us, you know? Like, sure, we can be offended. It's natural to be offended, but like, it's about them. There's an issue there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they are genuinely happy for you somewhere inside
Mm-hmm.
and don't quite have the capability to do that because, you know, for lack of a better explanation, they're unhappy in their own lives.
Exactly.
You
And
know?
I do think that this ties pretty closely to number one, where it's like, if you have someone that instead of being happy for you, their first reaction is jealousy,
Mhm.
then is this person talking more to you about their ideas and their aspirations and the ways that they want to be better, holding you accountable to the ways that they want to be better? I mean, like, maybe not, right? So
Right.
do they have the capacity to hold and celebrate the ways that you're succeeding, the ways that you deserve to be celebrated?
Mhm.
And like, I don't know what it is in culture at large, but I feel like a lot of pressure to be humble, and that means not celebrating your wins. And you should absolutely celebrate your wins of any size. Like, did you say you were going to wake up at 6 a.m. for a week and then you did it? Celebrate that.
Absolutely.
Did you say that you were going to run a 5K and then you did? Celebrate that.
I mean, this goes back to the event. Like, we celebrated 3,200 people celebrated a win with these people.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much power in that. Like, we're communal creatures. Like, we're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to do life alone. Like, having at least one person in your life that you know can celebrate you and you're not afraid, because sometimes I feel that way, like afraid to talk about my accomplishments.
Mm-hmm. Well, you
I
don't
don't
want to feel like boastful.
No, but it should be natural. It shouldn't even be a conversation. Like, if this person is a legitimate friend, like, you shouldn't have to preface your celebration with, you know, I'm not trying to show off. I've done that with like
You do that a lot.
with my best friends. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I really don't think that says anything about them. I think it says something about me. It's like, you know, if they're your homies, like, they're going to be happy to celebrate you,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you shouldn't be afraid. It's not boasting, you know?
Yeah.
Now, where I think it becomes a problem is like, are you celebrating them?
Yeah. I mean,
You
all
know,
of
it's
these.
always reciprocal, of course.
Yeah. Every single one of these bullet points is a give and take.
Right. So if
two-way
they're,
street.
yeah, so maybe, you know for sure they're your best friend. Maybe they haven't celebrated you in a long time. Well, maybe you should turn the mirror back at yourself. Like, well, maybe it's because you haven't celebrated them,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
I will also add that celebrating yourself, I think, raises the ceiling. And when you stifle those celebrations, it
Ooh.
can be difficult to push yourself to the next level, right? So, like, I used 5K as an example. Elliot and I joined a run club. If you asked us 1 year ago, maybe 6 months ago, if we thought we were going
A
to,
month ago, dude.
if we thought we
The
were,
heck?
well, actually moving to Denver, I have said I feel like I could be swayed to run.
You manifested
I've
that
been
shit,
seeding,
dude.
I have been seeding this a little bit.
And I was like, you're on your own.
Yes, every time I say it, Elliot's like, that's cool, you're gonna have to run alone. The point is, we didn't foresee ourselves joining a run club. We have not run together. Elliot was like, when's the last time we ran? When was the last
With
time
Simeon
you
at
ran?
Hyder Park in 2020.
That was 4 years ago. So if you can't count.
And we ran like a mile, dude. Like less, like 2 laps around Hyder Park, 3
So
laps.
what I'm saying is, I'm using that as an example because we just did that, didn't think we would do it or be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't celebrate having accomplished that, then maybe we wouldn't push ourselves to run a little bit more or to run more often or to do it faster or to raise that ceiling and to push ourselves, because why not?
This 5 ways to know who to keep in your circle is actually inspired by Ramon, who started the run club, Sticky Run Club, every Saturday at Union Station at 9 o'clock.
For all our Denver folks. Join us.
And
you'll see us huffing and puffing in the back.
This is the thing that we talked about. We talked about these things, and I think Ramon and I have like such a special relationship already because like we're both doing these things together. We're both always celebrating our wins. And, you know, I've seen him from the very like essence, like a molecule of the idea of the run club. And now it's real. And we've supported each other along the way. It sounds like I'm tooting my own horn here. I'm like trying to make an example of these 5 and how.
Wait, you're just doing the thing though that you said you wouldn't do, which is like, I'm not trying to boast.
Well, it sounds like I'm making it about me, but the run club is about Ramon. But anyway, sure. But we've celebrated each other all along the way. I've made sure to let Ramon know, like, this rocks, dude. Like
Mhm.
you've got it. And again, I'm not trying to say without it, would the run club not be here? It would absolutely be, but it might be a little bit harder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's nice to know that, you know, when you have this idea and it comes to fruition, that someone's got your back, and it just matters.
So this reminds me of number 4, which I also think is two-pronged. Someone who can keep you accountable and who you keep accountable. And the reason I say that this is two-pronged is because it is both this positive piece that we've been talking about. What are your goals? Are they asking you about your goals? If you're not reaching your goals, are they asking you why? If you're reaching success, are they celebrating you? Yes, there is this positive side. But what about the negative side? What about when you don't reach your goals? What about when you like are down and you need a little help getting back up, or like
down in the dumps, eh?
or like you need someone to
bad.
strike a match under your butt?
Yeah.
What is that kind of accountability? Because I think that there are two different sort of tones of accountability.
What are they?
There's that positive one that's a little bit more tough love celebration. And then I think there's this sort of tenderness to when things aren't going well, right? Like when you want to achieve something and you don't. Who are those people that are helping you get back up and try again, or giving you positive words when you need it? I mean, an example of this, honestly, I didn't share the text with you, but per Elliot's suggestion, we were getting stressed about our event series, Return to Real Life, our inaugural event. We were getting a little stressed. I reached out to some ladies who we know and love.
Hella stressed.
Yeah, just a little bit of stress. Explaining some of the stress that we have, asking them their opinions, and like every single one of them said, first and foremost, you're doing amazing. You are doing such a good job. Here are the ways that you're doing an amazing job. And that alone is enough. And here's my perspective that you asked for. And that is a perfect example of this kind of like dichotomy, is they could sense I was feeling a little raw, feeling a little stressed, so gave me that tender, like pick you up when you're down.
Yeah.
And then also gave me that other side of the accountability, which is you asked for my opinion. Here are my thoughts. Here's the strategy. Here's how I see it. Go ahead and like run with that. Let me know what you think.
Yeah. Love it.
And that's like pretty magical.
And it's simple too. Like you're doing a Marco Polo group and you don't talk all the time. And sometimes ladies miss it and sometimes you miss it. But at the end of the day, you guys are always at some point keeping a consistency and remaining accountable to one another and celebrating one another. Even if sometimes it's not everybody, because people are busy, there's at least one person that is doing one of those things at all times. And that's why probably the group has lasted so long.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
The last one is these all. It's funny because when you read them, they all seem very different, and they all share a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
You know, because the last one is, you know, someone who can tell you the truth even when it's difficult to hear. And we already sort of talked about that. And I keep saying this one seems like the most important. Though these are all very important in my opinion. You know, and who can tell you? First of all, can you be receptive when
That's a good
someone
point.
tells you the truth, even if it's hard to hear? And if you can't be receptive, then you've got some work to do.
Amen.
And we've both been there, and maybe
we're still working on it.
I was going to say, and we're both there, like today. And it's a question. Like again, we keep talking about the power of a question. Like power of a question, even that you ask yourself, which is there someone that I can be truthful with, and is there someone that can be truthful with me? And it's kind of scary because sometimes you do some stock and you like make a list and you're like, there's not really that many people in my life. And I really don't think that it should be a thing that we get bummed out about. I think it should inspire us, because you're like, oh, I know so many people, but like there's not very many people that I could do that with, or vice versa. But it's like, okay, that just means that conversations need to happen.
Yeah.
That just means that work needs to be done. That's all that it means. Because there's so many people that you know that you think of that have the potential, and then you're just like, okay, we haven't really ever had those real conversations, but like what's holding us back from doing that? And it starts with somebody. And usually if you've had the wherewithal to ask the question, then it's probably you. And you need to take advantage of that knowledge and do something with it.
This reminds me a lot of like boundaries. What are your personal boundaries? And when I think about examples of some of these tough conversations, it kind of comes down to boundaries. Like I think that moving away from Albuquerque especially when we go back, because now we're visiting, we don't live there, we have significantly less time and we're valuing our time in a totally new way. And so we have new boundaries around our time and around being late and around asking people to show up and then having that high standard for them. And when people fail you, because that happens, like we're humans, we make mistakes, we're going to fail each other. That doesn't mean that we have to sever our relationship forever, depending on what the thing is, of course.
Totally.
But how do you, instead of let that drive a wedge in your relationship, just nip it in the bud and say, hey, this happened and I'm actually disappointed. It hurt me in this way, or I felt disrespected in that way, or that wasn't what I was expecting from you, or I kind of hold you to a different standard. Not only does that better your relationship, that also betters that person.
Absolutely.
So the question that I feel like we've been continuously asking and answering since we started this podcast is like, how do you find these people? And something that's been a through line among the other strategies that we've talked about is the way that we bond over food and drink. Like chat up your local barista, invite a friend out for dinner, host people. Like the way that coffee culture and cafe culture has impacted us and all of the really important friends that we have in our life today.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see, thinking about like the nucleus or the big bang of everything that has transpired, all of the friends that we've made at coffee shops and where those relationships have taken us and have taken, those people. So that being said, it only makes sense that the first sponsor of our podcast is New Mexico Tico.
We're so excited.
It only makes sense. It's insane that it's happened. It's really, really awesome. And we had no idea who it would be. And it makes perfect sense that it's a tea company.
Yeah. And actually, sometimes when we show people, like we have like mini business cards for the podcast and people are like, oh, is it about food? Before we even have a chance to say what it's about because of all the characters.
Right.
And so I think that even though we're not a food podcast, we do talk a lot about like tea and coffee and like the way that food and drink are these really intimate connectors.
Absolutely.
And if you've been watching the video, you're like, what the heck are these cups that are just like the ice is melting over time?
And we wanted to try them for the first time on the podcast so that the way our reactions would be genuine. So we have not tried these, and Sam has been saying over and over off camera how thirsty she is.
Here's what we're doing. We're not just partnering. Like New Mexico Tea Company is the sponsor of this episode, but it's not just any kind of sponsorship. We are collaborating on a something more human tea blend.
Yes, we are.
Which we are just over the moon if you can't tell. So it's up to Elliot and I to sort of like start the thinking and the tasting and the ideating of what this is going to be. And we want you to be a little bit like part of this process.
Yeah, tell us which one you think you gravitate more towards. And keep in mind that it's going to be the summer. So we are trying to keep the summer theme in mind when customizing, when curating, when collaborating and creating this tea blend with Mexico Tico.
Yeah, like an iced tea, refreshing summertime, springtime. So this one is black currant and we mixed an oolong tea with it.
Just going to check it.
I like it, but I think that the black tea is maybe not the refreshing summertime vibe that I was looking for.
What am I going to say?
You love it.
I love it.
Just a little bit brighter.
I love that.
So the next one is a peach, apricot, and then a black jasmine tea.
If you know me, you know that I love jasmine tea. And the reason I'm so excited about New Mexico Tico is just the amount of times that I've, ingested New Mexico Tico at some coffee shop in Albuquerque is numerous.
I don't like jasmine. I feel the same way about this tea as the first one. Black tea is not quite like as bright for me, but I don't really like
I'm so easygoing. I love both of these. All right, number 3, plum oolong with grapefruit.
Do you like it that much? If we could find a way to take the earthiness out, I think I would love this.
Okay, I'm moving on. Blood orange, rooibos, and cream Earl Grey.
So this one's like a half calf.
Oh my God. It smells. I just smell the mic. It smells like
We've had a really long day.
I guess it's
whoa. I like this because it's almost giving me like dreamsicle vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what flavors are we moving forward with in round 2 of our trials for you?
I like the milk oolong,
Mhm.
and then I really like the black currant. I really like the peach apricot, and I'm a huge fan of the black jasmine.
I think that I'm a fan of the black currant. I like the cream Earl Grey, but again, feels like a little maybe warmer kind of tea.
Sure.
And then I mean, I did like the rooibos, that kind of blood orange. So I think we have some ideas. We need to go back to the drawing board. Stay tuned, everybody, for what this is going to be. Something just absolutely delicious. If you know how opposite Elliot and I are, you know how challenging it is for us to agree. So if you have any thoughts or combinations or ideas, shoot us a DM on Instagram, please.
Let us know.
The way that this partnership and tea blend came about is a perfect example of the theme that we've sort of been playing with for several episodes around being your authentic self, and bringing that authentic version forward attracts other authentic people and cultivates authentic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're pretty open, like heart on your sleeve, about what we're doing and the kind of partners that we're looking for and the way that we want to collaborate. And that's a great fit for some people, and it's not a great fit for others. And that is totally cool. But the way that we were able to chat with David at New Mexico Tea Company was so sort of like lighthearted and fun and
Mm-hmm.
really collaborative. Like we are really mission aligned in the way that tea connects people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually his idea that we do a tea blend. And as soon as he said it, Elliot and I were like, yep, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Like, sold. We don't even have to talk about it a second more.
I wasn't sure that you were going to admit to that, and I'm a little bit sad that you did, because I wanted to take credit for the idea. That's wrong, though. So I'm glad that you did bring it up. It wasn't our idea to do a custom tea blend, and I am really, really excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's just a testament to, because we opened this door, I think, of collaboration and authenticity.
Yeah.
We allowed that idea to even be shared.
Right.
And I think that that really speaks to the way that we're approaching these types of things. Like, we've listened to podcasts where people read a monitor and then we're like, well, you obviously don't even use that brand or like care.
Right. We keep going back to community. That's what this entire podcast is about. But if it weren't for, people listening, New Mexico Tea Co would not be interested. They're interested because we have, a modest following. So we have you to thank for that. And we really do thank you, and we appreciate it. And we're really excited for you to try this tea when it is ready to go. And obviously you will absolutely know.
And this kind of like authenticity piece, I feel like it's one of those things that's really trivial and sounds like really easy to do, but we can get caught up in the idea of being corny and sort of like filter ourselves or dull our flame, thinking about, oh, well, that's too corny, or like, I shouldn't do that because it would be uncool or too corny, or the way that it would be interpreted is somehow not the way that we're intending. And I think that we're like, one of our side quests is to just erase that thought patterning, and like, you should be corny and you can be corny, and that means nothing about your character, and it's not bad.
Right. If you went to the event, I would honestly, I would hope that the word corniness crossed your mind several times, because I think that really what that word just means is real and vulnerable. And when you're corny, it usually means you're, like you said, you're wearing your heart on your sleeve. But I feel like corniness, and at least in my opinion, when I'm ever worried about it, it's always genuine. It's like such a genuine emotion that you're worried that someone won't take it well because it's, I don't know, maybe too real or too bright or too loving. You know what I mean? But I really do hope that, at this event, you feel that. You feel the corniness, because there should be quite a bit of it, I would hope.
And I think this goes back to our kind of list of 5 that to keep people around you is like, if you are coming from this authentic place and someone's reaction is, oh, that's corny, that's not for me, then that person is just not meant to be in your inner circle, or they're not meant to be in your foxhole. And like, that's really good to know.
Yeah. And it's also okay.
Yeah. You can't be everything for everybody.
No. Yeah, you can't. And why? Tell them why. You can't be everything for everybody, because then you'll what? Be nothing to nobody?
Yes.
But then we go back to the McDonald's.
Oh my gosh.
Spicy chicken sandwich. McDonald's is for everybody, and they are one of the most profitable businesses. And I am ashamed to say that I got the McDonald's app
Oh my gosh.
a few weeks
don't.
ago, and I have had 3 spicy chicken sandwiches, no mayo, in 2 weeks.
You know who McDonald's is not for?
Who?
Vegetarians.
That's true.
I'm surprised
true.
that they don't have a meatless option.
So where do we go from here?
If you're everything to everyone, you're basically nothing to no one. And it is good to know what you like just as much as it is to know what you don't like.
Mhm.
And so it's good to know who likes your specific brand of weird and who doesn't. And it's okay to like distinguish those groups from each other.
Right.
And just like Serena said a few episodes ago, it can take literally one person to change your life. And so to not take it so personally when those moments do arise where you're being authentic, it comes across as corny, it doesn't land the way you want, like
Yeah.
the person's maybe not your flavor of weird and it's a miss. And like that is part of the human experience and it's okay and you'll find that next connection.
Definitely. And to get a little heavy, you know, for those of you who feel alone or feel like there's no way that I could ever, no matter what I do, have 3,200 people or even 75 people for me, that is why we created these events, truly.
Mm-hmm.
Because we want you to feel the power and the connection that we feel when we're in a room of people that are there for the same reasons that we are. And yeah, I mean, that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why we're doing this. That's why we created the events. And so if you feel that way, you know, first of all, you can reach out to us always. DM, email. I mean, I don't think we'll ever have our numbers available on the internet, but certainly.
Oh, phone numbers?
Certainly.
We'll respond to your DM for sure.
I was going to say, certainly you can call me. That could get difficult.
If you've called Elliot, you know he probably actually won't answer.
That's not true. I'll call back.
Comment.
So it starts there, but it also starts with one person. It just takes one person. Find one person that can check off 3 or 4 out of 5 of those things and invest in that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it will absolutely pay dividends for you.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe that. I think that's an objective truth.
And I also feel like don't shut the door too early. For example, we're doing these events because we want to be connectors. Like we want to be cultivating these physical spaces for you to connect with other people, not just to connect with us.
Right.
So let's say you come and you don't really vibe with us that well. Maybe we're not meant to be friends, but like maybe you meet someone through us who is that one person that changes your life. And I think that that's a different way to reframe connections where it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that has totally changed the way that I think about especially building friends in a city that we're still kind of brand new to.
We have to plug in the Michael Scott soundbite where he's like, you know, I don't want to be liked. I don't have to be liked. I
need to be liked.
Yeah, I knew, or something like that. I need to be liked. I have an incessant desire to be liked. And I'm like, if you come to our event, you don't vibe with us, I will be so sad.
Oh, that was a painful laugh from you?
Yeah. But I'm like, Elliot, like you said, you can't be for everybody, you know?
You can't.
But I want to be.
And I think that by trying to be something for everybody, you, again, dull that flame and you, like, bland up your special flavor of weird. And then you're actually not being your most authentic self. So you're not necessarily attracting the perfect people.
Yeah.
And so it's a cycle, and part of the human experience is some of the misses and the failures and the I did my best and I wanted to connect and it didn't land. And that's literally totally fine and totally normal and a part of the process. Yeah. It's like finding love, literally.
You're right.
That's all, folks.
Sam and I want to thank you so much for listening to Something More Human. If you're enjoying the podcast and want to support us, there are plenty of no-cost, minimal effort ways you can do so.
For starters, you can subscribe to the show on your favorite listening platform. You can leave us a 5-star review, drop us a comment with a topic you'd like to hear us discuss in an upcoming episode, and you can also keep up with us on Instagram and TikTok. Give us a follow there at Something More Human. Thanks so much.
Thank you.